estimate. So why don't we go ahead and let me know when we have the recording going, and then I will go ahead and open up the meeting.
The recording has begun.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Justice Reinvestment Grant Review Committee for today. As you know, it's Friday, the 23rd of September. This is our designated time for us to be looking at the grant reviews. And so what we're going to do first is start off with a roll call and get a meeting overview. So colleagues, when your name is called, please let us know that you're here. And also, if you'd be so kind to let us know how you're participating, if you're participating by video and or if you're participating by audio only. And what we will do is at that point, I will ask for just to go through a couple of ground rules, which I'm assuming that we will be using just for protocol since we are doing a virtual meeting. So with that, if we can do the roll call, please.
Sure, happy to do that. Commissioner Bozovich, he indicated he would not be able to attend.
Okay.
DA Perlow.
Present, and I'm on video.
Chief Scales.
Present via video.
Sheriff Reese.
Present via video.
Justice Nelson indicated she wouldn't be able to attend. Lisa Norton. And I don't see Lisa yet. Oh, there she is. I'll circle back to her. Director Gary Ram.
Present by video.
Executive Director Stewart.
Present and on video.
Lisa Norton.
Present by video.
And then Representative Krupp is the only one we're waiting on. And that rounds out the attendance.
All right, thank you. And just for the record, Floyd Przonski also here by video. So colleagues, I know that you have been doing a lot of virtuals. Just for the record, for all of us as members, please be attentive as best as you can. It'd be best if you can leave your video on while you have that opportunity, understanding that you may need to close that off. Your mic should be muted until you're ready to call. Realize that we are not able to use the chat for official discussions. Everything needs to be on the record, and chat is not part of the record. So please remember that that should not be a means for us to be communicating as it pertains to the subject matter that we'll be covering today. And as I've mentioned earlier, because of my schedule with a floor session for confirmation votes, I will not be able to attend for the full meeting. And Ian and his crew will be kind of running through us and going through the direction. The hand chat approach in the sense of recognizing, we'll try to use that approach. Please don't hesitate if you're got your video up to wave and stuff if you need to be recognized and I've missed you by chance, or if Ian and others have missed you as well. And I think with that, we're going to get started. I do want to say to Patty Perlow, Patty, I apologize for not getting back to you on a couple of your emails. I hope to make contact with you this next week. So Ian, why don't we go ahead and start off the driving on your end as to the overview. And also I should make one other comment for those who are attending as public members. Please feel free to observe and watch. Besides the public comment time, I am going to be requesting that you keep your video as well as your audio off, so it will not be interfering with the discussions that we are having. With that, Ian, go ahead and get started.
Happy to do so. Senator, would you like to do public comment now, or should I proceed with the presentation?
I think what I'd like to do is get the overview so everyone knows that, because that way I think public comment would may be focused on maybe what the presentations are going to be, so members will know what the public feels at this point.
Perfect. Okay, so to begin, just wanted to remind members of the Grant Review Committee that we have sent the materials for today's meeting, including the applications and the grant requirement, by email, and they're also included in the calendar invite for today. If you do not happen to have those, please let me know, and Avery will send you an email right away. So I assume everyone has those. If not, please speak up. Here's the rough agenda for today. This is also included in the attachment. I won't go through them line by line, just wanted to preview them though. And then, so the main focus for today's meeting is to discuss the capacity building grant and to provide some context of where this grant came from. As a reminder, you all recommended to the Criminal Justice Commission that they set aside $600,000 of Justice Reinvestment Grant funding for the purposes of this grant. The Criminal Justice Commission agreed with your recommendation and set those funds aside. The purpose of this grant is to empower counties to understand, build, and apply cultural responsiveness and equity in their existing justice reinvestment grant programs. As you may recall, in the final applications that were submitted for the 21-23 biennium, many of you noted that with the new cultural responsiveness questions that it was clear that some counties needed additional technical assistance or additional financial support to allow them to provide the strongest answers when the next biennium rolls around. And so this funding helps counties do that to an extent. And so interested counties were eligible to receive up to $35,000 if they applied by themselves. However, if they applied with other counties, each county would be eligible to receive up to $50,000 each. Now, what you will see today is that each county actually applied as an individual entity. So each county was eligible to receive up to $35,000. No county applied as a team. And then we gave several prompts. So for the funding options, we allowed counties to apply for one of two options. The first was option A, which was to develop an equity action plan. So they could use those up to $35,000 to build and develop and begin implementation of an equity action plan. Option B was to enhance the provision of culturally responsive services. And more information about both of those options and what the requirements would look like for a county are included in the documents that were sent in advance. I will note here that of the 11 applicants, 10 of them applied for option A. So they requested funding to develop an equity action plan. And only one of the 11, Washington County, asked for option B, which was to enhance the provision of culturally responsive services. There is another county that did kind of a piece of both, which we'll cover in just a moment. But when asked, they indicated that they were doing option A. So as I noted previously, all those applications were submitted as an individual county, and of the available funding, $600,000, we received requests for just shy of $370,000, or 61% of the available funding, with a remaining amount a little bit more than $230,000, or 39%. And so one option you have right now before you is to recommend to the Criminal Justice Commission that they roll over the remaining funds into the supplemental round. And I can talk through what that supplemental round looks like, but Senator, if you'd like me to pause here before, if this was the overview portion, we can certainly do public comment now.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. So for those who are on the call and following us today, if you're part of the general public, I would ask you at this time, if you would like to make comment if you're on video, if you'll bring your video up so we can see you and have your audio turned on. If you're not on video and you're calling in by audio, you may need to do a *6 to unmute yourself to be heard. But this is an appropriate time for public comment. Is there any? Ian, I'm going to take that as a negative. And so at this point, we will close the public comment period, and we'll go ahead and continue with our meeting, and please proceed.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and pull up. Nope, not that.
Now you're up.
So while I pull up this PowerPoint, the first decision point before you is whether or not you would like to make a recommendation to the Criminal Justice Commission on how they should spend the remaining funds that have not been requested for the capacity building grant. And so that is $232,000. You could make a recommendation. Ultimately, it is the commission's decision. And so our, I guess, staff recommendation to you all is that you could recommend to the commission that they roll over the remaining funds into the supplemental round. Now, you're probably asking, what is a supplemental round? And a supplemental round occurs, and this is all dictated by Oregon administrative rule. And a supplemental round is when there are unallocated funds, like an instance that we have now. There can also be unallocated funds as a result of a county not applying for funding or declining funding, or if a county, for example, were not to receive second year funding or not to be awarded any funding during a biennium. And so the commission, if you were to move forward with this recommendation, and if the commission were to agree with your recommendation, the commission, according to Oregon administrative rules, has two ways of allocating that supplemental round funding. The first is to do a direct award to an existing grant program. And you could or encourage them to do that as you have done in the past, where you recommended to the Criminal Justice Commission to augment or increase funding to Multnomah County, which you just did in this last fall. Historically, the Criminal Justice Commission has opted to go through a competitive grant process where each county has an equal opportunity to apply and receive this funding. In any event, if in whether the commission chooses a direct award or a competitive grant process, if the funds otherwise would have been awarded to county programs, so what that means is that if it's not returned or unawarded funds, and so for our purposes, what that actually means is the $160,000 and change that Tillamook County would have received for that second year funding. So Tillamook County wasn't awarded that second year funding. However, so for those $160,000, priority distribution will go to counties funding programs for historically underserved communities. So this is all a lot of contextual information, but I think it's helpful, and especially in light of one of the applications which you will see today. Washington County has requested $35,000. However, the need for them is closer to $85,000. And so they have indicated to me that they intend to apply for supplemental grant or supplemental round funding. And if they were to do that, they would classify under that priority distribution category. Perhaps there are other counties as well, but I just wanted to provide that contextual information there. And then next here is a very brief overview of the grant application itself. Per your recommendations, we kept the application very streamlined. And so we asked them for budget information. We asked them if they were applying with another county. We asked them to tell us if the funds were going to be used for option A, to build an equity action plan, or option B, for the provision of culturally responsive services. Then we asked them to describe how those funds would be used, and then provide a description of how this proposal fits within broader county initiatives, because we know that the criminal justice system doesn't work in a vacuum, and that one of the key partners for many criminal justice system actors is, of course, the county itself. So this was a contextual type question. And so, Senator Przonski, this is where we're about ready to dive into the grant applications, but if it's okay with you, I would pause to see if there's any questions.
Yes, feel free to lead. Yeah, I agree. This is an opportunity for members to give comment before we start getting into the specific request. And let me ask Ian regarding your suggestion or for the council as to the remaining funds that are available. Do you need a vote now at this point, or is this something we should hold off and wait until you get through the rest of the presentation?
A vote now would actually be ideal, probably.
All right, so colleagues, I'm going to ask Ian if you'll put that into a motion or the script, so we can just I would then make it a formal motion.
Yeah, the motion language would be that the grant review committees recommends to the commission that they roll over the remaining capacity building grant funds into a supplemental round.
All right, I also move that motion to the commissioners to take a position. What we'll need to do at this point is, because we are on virtual, I'm going to ask you to please give your name at the time that you give your vote, so it will be recorded and in that sense. So, Ian, I'm not sure if you or if you have one of your staff that will be doing the call through.
I can do it. Sarah Stewart. Sorry, could you say that again?
Yay. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Patty Perlow,
Yes,
Mike Reese,
Yes.
Matt Scales,
Yes.
Neat Galliran,
Yay.
Lisa Norton.
Yes.
That is all of the voting members present.
All right, it sounds like you have an affirmative vote, and that will be the recommendation coming from the commissioners to the commission.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions about the process or the application details before we get into specific applications? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed alphabetically. So the first county is Clackamas County. So they are requesting $35,000 to contract with the National Policy Consensus Center. They are based out of Portland State University, and Clackamas County has been working with them for, I want to say, a year now. And they would like to continue that relationship and work on the next phase of their equity action plan development. And so previously, the National Policy Consensus Center, which I'll refer to as NPCC, they have worked with the LIPSC, the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, with several recommendations. And so the consultant now will help the LIPSC determine a framework for data sharing among criminal justice system partners. They will help them determine how to collaborate across agencies and community partners, as well as determine shared language for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. They'll also take a look at community representation on the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council and help determine which data are useful to share both at the LIPSC and then publicly. In terms of the broader context, Clackamas County's ask will help them meet the two of the strategic priorities of Clackamas County as a government at large. And so that is the staff report on Clackamas County. Are there any questions? Okay. Next is Columbia County. So they are also asking for $35,000 for consultant services. However, they have not yet identified a consultant. They intend to do that once the funds are awarded. This consultant will research and identify areas where diversity, equity, and inclusion can be improved. They will help develop an equity action plan and make recommendations on how to execute the plan locally. They'll also identify marginalized populations and identify the obstacles to serving those marginalized populations. More broadly speaking, this aligns with the Board of Commissioners adopted resolution in 2020 in support of racial equity. Any questions on Columbia County? Okay. Next is Deschutes County. And now Deschutes County, they indicated that they're doing option A, building or creating an equity action plan, and they are doing that. They're also, I think, doing a little bit of option B, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Deschutes County has now for almost 2 years been meeting with a group of community members. They've spent a lot of time educating these community members on what is often a black box that is the criminal justice system. And so they are, like Clackamas County, they're partway through the development process. So they are asking for a little bit more than $15,000 to create the equity action plan. And that in particular would require 2 hours a month in 2 county positions, a equity plan consultant, and then they're requesting $100 stipends for 9 community members who will help them shape the equity action plan. And as part of the community conversations that they have been having, and in partnership with a local nonprofit called the Fathers Group, they are creating a new program called the Bridge Program. They're asking for just shy of $20,000 to help with that. That would go towards Bridge Program mentor stipends, Bridge Program client responsivity supports, and to provide information about what the Bridge Project is. It provides Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, and men of color with a space, mentors, and pro-social activities to create or strengthen culturally affirming community ties and meet their personal goals and the requirements of community supervision. This would be Deschutes County's first locally culturally responsive treatment service and limited identified culturally responsive local resources. So this, I think, very clearly meets the goals of what you all had set out last fall. Now, more broadly speaking, Deschutes County is soliciting proposals for a county-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion consultation assessment, as well as training plan. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions about Deschutes County's application. And I should note here that I don't actually have the Hollywood squares of everyone, so please do speak up if you are raising your hand. Next is Douglas County. They are asking for just shy of $18,000 to partner with the National Policy Consensus Center to conduct a diversity, equity, and inclusion project analysis. And so Douglas County has had conversations with Clackamas County, heard what NPCC did with Clackamas County, and they are beginning the same process that Clackamas County had previously done. So with the National Policy Consensus Center on contract, NPCC will interview local public safety coordinating council members to learn perspectives on equity-related issues, including department operations. These interviews will be anonymous, and so they'll be more candid and perhaps offer a more clear analysis on where Douglas County is. In addition, NPCC will develop a report which the county will use for self-assessment and as a general roadmap for next steps. More broadly speaking, this funding will facilitate further collaboration with Umpqua Health Alliance, which is their local community care organization that operates the Oregon Health Plan locally. And this will help with further collaboration because Umpqua Health Alliance is also embarking on those significant equity-related efforts. And so together they work closely now, but this will allow them to work closely on equity-related issues. Any questions about Douglas County's application? Okay. Next is Jackson County. So they are asking for $22,500 for a cultural agility trainer / coach / mentor. So this will offer 16 hours of cultural agility training to all new employees, 20 hours of consultation to community justice leaders and department champions, and then 6 hours of group teaching sessions to champions to enable them to facilitate smaller project-oriented groups. So as a result of the questions that were posed in the final application, around cultural responsiveness. Jackson County for some time now has been working with a community stakeholder group, and that informed this application that they have submitted. And then they have identified within community justice, the county's community justice department, and several champions that will champion diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to help change the culture there at community justice. And so they've identified this as a key, I guess, step to be able to embed diversity, equity, and inclusion within their justice reinvestment program. They've also are asking for $12,500 for the development of a demographic dashboard. And so this will be a near real time. It will actually be a 24-hour delay, but it will reflect the current population of community justice clients. So those on parole and probation. And this will ensure that community justice is using equitable and responsive practices based on gender and race. So I know it has been something that you all have remarked on in the past about the lack of more real-time data on certain things. And so Jackson County is working to build that capacity locally. And then in response to the question about the more broader efforts in the county, they noted that community justice has selected partnerships with agencies, programs, and individuals that are working towards similarly shared goals on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Are there any questions about Jackson County's application?
Ian, this is Floyd Przonski. I just want to note for the commission, there's two requests here for Jackson County. The second one, as you mentioned, is on the demographic dashboard. I'm wondering at some point, not knowing how much revenue we have available to be dispersed or recommended for disbursement, how many other of the counties actually have achieved a demographic dashboard as they have proposed?
I don't know if this is the exact same thing that other counties are building. I know Klamath County is building a dashboard. I can't remember right now if that is the demographic dashboard that Jackson County is building. And I also know that Multnomah County has done some work around this. I can certainly find out in talking with those counties and get back to you on that though.
Okay. So colleagues, what I'm just wanting to do, at least from my perspective, is just put highlights of ones where if we do not have sufficient funds to fulfill all of the requests, some that we may want to, even though they're important, put into a secondary tier. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Next is Lane County. They are asking for $35,000 to hire an equity consultant that will help them on 3 different items: equity education, Praxis Coaching, and actually I'll go through them one by one. So equity education here they would establish a common language, identify and understand theoretical framework, and understand Oregon as well as Lane County's historic legacy, and develop foundational skills such as intercultural communications, tending to impacts, as well as identify components for the next phase of education and skill building and any other needs identified through this process of equity education. Next is Praxis Coaching. And so this would provide LPSC, the local public safety coordinating council members, support as they put concepts into practice with each other, along with their home agencies or organizations and with communities more broadly in Lane County. The next piece is to develop an equity action plan. So this would be a blueprint to addressing LPSC's near and midterm actions necessary to move towards equitable processes and outcomes and sustaining healthy community engagement. More broadly speaking, this would assist Lane County's help Lane County advance their work in the county's racial equity action plan. Any questions or comments on Lane County's application? Okay. Next is Marion County. They're asking for $35,000 for a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant to help the Community Corrections Division, which is housed in the Sheriff's Office, with the development of an equity action plan. Specifically, the consultant would conduct an assessment of readiness to engage in equity planning, identify gaps in services, identify key training areas to help increase cultural competency of staff, provide recommendations on engaging with underserved communities, and identify steps to increase provision of culturally responsive services. And then this fits within the broader county's strategic plan for public safety. Any questions or comments for Marion County? Okay. Polk County, so they are asking for $35,000 for a consultant. And this consultant would conduct a needs and gap analysis to identify current resources and outline deficiencies or barriers to justice-involved individuals. They would also use survey tools and conduct interviews and focus groups to gain this information. They noted specifically that they would ensure that the Spanish-speaking population is included, and that they're also working with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde to ensure that there's also a tribal component to this. And then the county has parallel work that will further support and enhance the development of an equity action plan for the criminal justice system. Any questions or comments about Polk County? Washington County. So as a reminder, this is the county that asked for $35,000, not for building of an equity action plan, but instead to expand or enhance culturally responsive services. And so they are asking for $35,000 for mentor services and incentives. They are hiring a half-time Afrocentric recovery mentor who will work with the Black justice involved individuals transitioning to the community. And so this is part of a broader Afrocentric supervision team. So this recovery mentor will work alongside a Afrocentric probation officer, and the mentor here, the recovery mentor, as well as the probation team, will receive training in HEAT, which is habilitation, empowerment, accountability therapy, and it's an Afrocentric holistic approach to therapy. It has been used in other parts of the country, in particular in correction setting. I also believe Multnomah County has a HEAT team as well. And so this would be the first time that Washington County is bringing HEAT or an Afrocentric approach to recovery to Washington County. And then more broadly speaking, the county is engaged in a wide-scale centering of diversity, equity, and inclusion through the County Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, and Community Corrections is actively developing an equity-informed lens. So Washington County is that county that I flagged for you at the beginning, which is the actual cost of the recovery mentor, of a full-time recovery mentor, is around $85,000. Because of the cap that we instituted, they're only able to ask for $35,000. However, Washington County will likely ask for additional funds in the supplemental round that you just now recommended that the commission undertake. Any questions about Washington County's application? Okay. So the last application to review is Yamhill County's. They are asking for $20,000 for a consultant to help them with equity action planning. The equity action plan will describe future objectives, strategies, and timelines. It will also identify potential barriers to providing culturally responsive services and solutions to those barriers. They'll also develop a diversity survey to solicit feedback of the needs and concerns of those presently involved in the justice system. They are also asking for $15,000 for diversity, equity, and inclusion training, as well as paying for the travel of the trainer. The training would be for local stakeholders, LIPSIC members, as well as local staff. And the goal of the training is to provide a working knowledge of diversity, equity, and inclusion so they can all speak that same language and have those shared goals to continue to advance the work that Yamhill County is undertaking. This effort will assist the efforts that were initiated in 2020 when the local Yamhill County Circuit Court stood up a racial justice committee. Any questions about Yamhill County's application? Okay. So, Senator, now would probably be the appropriate time to do a motion to either approve or discuss whether or not to fund all of these 11 requests.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put that motion up for we can open up for discussion. So at this point, the chair will move for the approval of funding all of the requests that have been made in the applications by the various counties. And under our rules, I do believe we need a second for that. I'm not positive.
Matt Scales, I'll second that motion.
All right, we do have a second. So that will now open it up for discussion. Ian, if you could be so kind, as I alluded to, I apologize. I was not quite as prepared today as I should have been as to the amount that has been requested for funding. As to do we have sufficient funds to fund all of the requests as they have been requested?
Yes, you do have sufficient funding. You actually have a little bit in excess of funding.
All right. So colleagues, I think at this point, what we should do is that we have a motion before us. I do want to open this up for discussion so we can make a record if anyone would like to, as to whether anyone is in I'm going to say opposition or have concerns about any of the requests, and whether we want to give any insight to the commission as to things they should be considering regarding any of the requests that have been made. I'm going to take that as no one has any desire to put anything else on the record. So we do have a motion before us that, Ian?
Senator, Lisa just raised her hand.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have that set up. Lisa, if you'd be so kind to go ahead and state your, I guess, name and then also your points.
Sure. For the record, my name is Lisa Norton. I just wanted to thank Ian, his whole team, the Justice Commission, just that we are having these conversations and we are making funds available. And I just want to express my appreciation for that. That's all I wanted to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, I'm not seeing anyone else raising their hands or wanting to engage. So why don't we go ahead and take the motion that's before us. And this motion, again, for the record, is to basically fund all of the requested proposals from the counties that we have gone through this morning. Ian, why don't we go ahead and call the roll, please?
Sure. Patty Perla.
Aye.
Matt Scales.
Aye.
Mike Reese.
Aye.
Lisa Norton.
Yes.
Nate Gallagher.
Yes.
Sarah Stewart.
Yes.
And I'll note that Commissioner Bozovich is excused. He's the other vote.
All right, thank you. So it appears that we have an affirmative vote of unanimous for those members who are here and present to be able to vote. And so I think that will take care of this part of the process. Ian, what else do you, what's our next phase?
Yes, next, we'd like to talk about the trio. Oh, sorry, DA Perla.
Patty?
Sorry, Senator, I neglected to announce my conflict on voting for Lane County. And so we voted for the entire package, and that included Lane, and I am from Lane County.
All right. I'm going to just ask, that is part of the record as far as I'm concerned. Is there anyone else who feels that they want to or need to declare a potential conflict on the vote we just took? All right, that's so noted.
Stewart, I'm also from Lane County, so if Patty shouldn't have voted, I probably shouldn't have either.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so let the record note as to the potential conflicts that have been put on to the record. And at this point, Ian, if you'll go ahead with the next part of the program.
Sure. Okay. So for the next portion of the meeting, we'll be discussing the triaging criteria that we would like to implement for the 23-25 formula grant applications. And so to set this up, the last time we met, you all identified a need to better assess equity in the county's justice reinvestment grant programs. So in the intervening, yes.
Sorry, I had my hand raised virtually,
Oh,
but you
sorry.
mentioned to speak up. Senator, you'd mentioned earlier that you wanted to explore a secondary process for, I think it was Jackson County's application, or maybe it was Washington County's application for additional funding.
Nate, what I wanted to do, what I meant to do, I should say, was just, I was not sure how much revenue or funding we had available. And that if we were going to need to make some decisions as to not funding all of the proposals in their entirety, that we would just earmark that might be one of the areas that we could consider. But it appears that based on Ian's representation, we had adequate funds, and I think at this point that took care of everything. And so that's the only reason I had brought that up. So was there something else that you wanted to cover, or just wanted to clarify that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. And then also, I think it would be covered in that supplemental application, that one of the goals is to promote racial disparity, or at least addressing racial disparity issues. So anyway, yeah, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you too. Ian, if you'll continue.
Sure. Okay. So last time we met, you all identified that you wanted better tools to better assess equity in the counties that are receiving justice reinvestment grant programs. And so in the intervening months, we as staff have been having a lot of discussions on how best to do that. And so we are still working on the best answer specific to the equity analysis question. However, in those conversations, we identified some general data considerations. The first of which is something that we've talked about in the past, which is the fact that larger counties have larger data sets, which allow for more in-depth analysis as we consider those applications. And the other, of course, is that smaller counties have, as you might imagine, smaller data sets. And so the question of how we define what a small county is does matter. And so we will, at a future date, have a more robust discussion of what an equity assessment might look like and how that could impact justice reinvestment grant applications. But for today, we wanted to focus in on that foundational data question, which is how we define small counties. And so to provide additional historical information, this last biennium, the 21-23 biennium, was the first time that we implemented a triaging process. And that came about as a result of a recommendation from the Justice Reinvestment Equity Advisory Committee that wrote the House Bill 3064 report. In that report, they specifically called out as a recommendation to create a multi-tiered system of review. The Grant Review Committee should adopt a formal triage process that engages multi-tiered systems of support. Doing so would promote efficient use of limited time and resources by directing attention to county applications in most need of support. And so, as you may recall, this is something that we did this last biennium, or this present biennium, rather. So we using two different data points, which is looking specifically at prison usage. Here, this axis here, the difference from the baseline, so that historical baseline, that red line that you see going across most prison usage displays, using that as well as a difference in prison usage from the previous year to the present year. And so with those two data points, we were able to plot each county into one of these buckets. Now, those that fell into the category of over the baseline with increasing prison usage, we did what we called a deeper dive analysis of those counties. For the counties that were over baseline with decreasing usage in the last year, or under the baseline but with increasing prison usage, we did what we called a standard analysis. And then for the counties that were under their baseline and had seen decreasing prison usage, we did a qualitative analysis looking specifically at their the proposal in the application as opposed to the data piece. And so we think that that worked very well last time. And we are recommending that we again do this bucketing that we did this for this round of applications. However, as you may recall, we did not include small counties in this initial triaging. So any county that was below 20,000 in population, they were not placed into one of these buckets. Now, I'll note here that as I think is evident, that the data are not reliable for small counties. So we didn't place them in these buckets. And so, and as just a reminder, these buckets are just to set an initial review criteria. It doesn't dictate outcome. It didn't dictate outcome last time. In fact, one of the counties that was placed in the green bucket was placed on a one-year provisional because there were concerns about their application. And so both CJC staff as well as you all as the grant review committee still have the right to look deeply at the data for any county, regardless of what bucket or no bucket they land in. This is just a starting point it's a triaging mechanism to allow us to at least initially look at counties in a particular way, though it doesn't dictate outcome and it doesn't preclude us from doing different kinds of data analysis if we so choose. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions about the process that we used last time before I turn it over to Catherine. Okay, seeing no questions. So Catherine will go ahead and explain our staff recommendation.
It looked like, briefly before I jump in, it looked like Rep. Crop may have had a question there.
Oh, please.
Oh, not so much a question. I just want to tell folks that I'm here. Sorry for being late.
Okay, thank you, Representative.
All right, thank you, Ian. Hello, committee members, chair. For the record, my name is Catherine Talon. I'm a research analyst here at CJC. And I just have a few data slides to chat through with you all concerning what Ian sort of introduced for us. As you all probably remember, smaller counties can present some data challenges for us when we're looking at assessing their prison use and their programs. So the main challenge that they pose is that there's some high volatility in their data, in that one or two cases can have a big effect on their overall prison usage. While we haven't, as staff, determined what our staff recommendation for an equity data analysis would be, we know that we will necessarily be looking at different race groups within these county data sets, and that will further decrease the numbers that we have for analyses, which makes it even harder to do some more in-depth analyses with smaller counties. So this is sort of why we have concerns about maybe the threshold of population that we used in the past for defining small counties. I want to reiterate that labeling a county as small doesn't make any determination on their funding, but it does allow the GRC and the CJC staff to better spend our time and resources on gathering information that's most helpful for understanding small counties and their programs. This plot on the right-hand side here is sort of an initial look at our staff proposal for changing the threshold here. So as Ian said, this biennium, we used a 20,000 population ceiling. So all counties that had under 20,000 folks in their population were considered small. Our proposal is that we raise that threshold to 35,000. And in doing so, we would take the 9 counties that were considered small in 2021 or the 2021-2023 biennium and bump that up to a total of 16 counties by including that sort of middle portion there. As we go through all these slides, feel free to jump in with questions right away. I feel like that's the easiest way with any sort of data questions. So I'll briefly pause here, but I have a better explanation of some of these issues in my next slide as well. Okay, I think we're good to hop to the next slide. Thank you, Ian. So this looks a lot like something that we've discussed before, and it's actually sort of a screenshot from our future dashboard. But this is on the left-hand side, our typical prison use plot with the usual baseline. And this is just for an example county. So this is a county that fell into our large counties category in the 2021-2023 biennium, but under the new proposed 35,000 population threshold, this would be considered a small county. So this is just sort of like a case study of one of those that might be reconsidered as a small county in the future. In early 2022, maybe if you wanna, there we go, thank you, Ian. So in early 2022, in around March, there was a case in this county that had resulted in a length of stay of, I believe it's 111 months, somewhere in that range, and that's very high. And because there weren't a whole lot of other cases to balance it out, because this county's population is still relatively small, we see this pretty large spike, right, in the beginning months of 2022 in their overall prison usage. This is probably familiar. This is something that we've looked at when we are doing assessments of counties, right? And so this was happening even when we were doing our sort of large county assessments. We were making notes for you all that, hey, even though this is a large county, there's this case that we want to be aware of, and it maybe isn't indicative of the program overall. So one other thing is, because we use this rolling sum in our large county assessments, this case is going to exist in that prison usage measure for a year. It doesn't just drop off and we can look past it. So this county's 2021 and 2023 biennium results will continue to be largely driven by one case. And while in previous years, we were able to look at these few counties and say, hey, as staff, we noticed this one case. We know it may not be totally representative of the program, and we just need to be aware of that. If we start taking these counties and their data sets and breaking them down further through an equity lens, this type of case is going to be really detrimental to the really small population counties that we're looking at. So I guess this is just, I want to pause for questions. I think this is a familiar look at what a single case can do to a smallish county. But I'll leave it open for question for a minute. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you. So this and then the next slide really serve to explain just what this change would look like. less reasoning behind it and more what we might be moving into if we up this threshold just a little bit. These are all with, so this, see at the very bottom, population estimate for 2021. It's important to note that, of course, population changes over time, typically grows, but this determination was made with that in mind. So if you take a look at where the 35,000 population line is on this plot, it leaves room for growth of some of those newly small counties so that we don't expect that the group of counties labeled as small would change very rapidly. For a few biennium, it should remain the same group of counties. One other thing to note here is that up at the top, Jackson appears to be our largest county, and that's just because we pulled the top 5 largest counties off so that we could visualize the smaller counties on the left. They are included in the measures we're going to discuss. These blue, like true blue counties at the bottom have been considered small in the past. The teal counties in the middle are those that would now, under the 35,000 threshold, be considered small, in addition to the blue ones. All right. Ian, if you want to pull up the, yeah. Okay, so here's another look at it. As it stands with this 20,000 population threshold, small counties make up $1 million of the overall formula funding, and large counties make up $40.2 million of the overall funding. And as far as prison use goes, those currently small counties make up only 1.7% of overall prison usage for all the GRI counties. But if we switch that over to the figures for the new proposed small counties, there's some slight changes there, although not a huge difference in those overall percentages. So we see that $2.9 million of the funding would go to the new proposed small counties, 38.3 would go to the new proposed large counties, and then 8.6% of overall prison usage would be allocated to those small counties. Are there any questions about either of these plots? Okay, then I think I will turn it back over to Ian with just a reminder that this change really would be serving to ensure that CJC staff can provide and GRC members can consider the correct data and analyses for each county depending on their size and their needs.
Thank you, Catherine. So to reiterate our recommendation, our staff recommendation is to continue to triage the large counties into those buckets, those orange, green, and yellow buckets that we saw earlier. However, the most significant change would be to increase the population threshold to $35,000, or excuse me, 35,000 population for small counties, which would not be triaged into those initial buckets. However, of course, as we've said a few times here, the triaging does not dictate outcome. It only is the initial review. So this is our recommendation. If you all accept that recommendation, we will go ahead and plan for the next biennium with these new thresholds.
Colleagues, this is a time for discussion on their staff recommendations. The floor is open for those who would like to make comment. I'm checking the board on participants. I'm not seeing anyone's hand up or I'm not hearing anyone. Nate, I see you're up now.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Thank you, CJC, for that presentation. From a smaller county, I really appreciate just recognizing that there are anomalies with, 1 or 2 cases that, their length of stay sometimes throws our graphs off. And so I just appreciate you recognizing that and addressing it. So good job.
Colleagues, any other comments? I'm not seeing any. So at this point, it appears that, let's say, our discussion on the recommendation has been complete. At this point, do we need to do a motion for the recommendation, or what are our next step for finalizing on this action item?
I don't think we need a motion per se. It appears to be a consensus with our in agreement of our recommendation. So we'll go ahead and move forward with that.
All right. So I'm just going to make certain, just for the record, since we are on a virtual meeting, if there is anyone that's not in agreement with what has just been stated as a consensual agreement, consensus, then please speak up now. If not, then that's how we will record this. All right, looks like we got a done deal. So that takes care of action item number 2, which is sub number 5. And that, I believe, gets us to the point of Q questions as when next steps. But before we go there, Ian, is there anything else that for the good of the order that we need to cover before going to questions and next steps?
Nothing from CJC staff.
All right, colleagues, we're at this point of, let's say, getting ready for conclusion, which has been a very, let's say, smooth meeting. And I want to thank staff, as you've heard from others, as for your preparation for us to be willing and able to get through the material as quickly as we have. Other comments or questions that we may have, then I'm going to ask Ian to give us any other next steps that we will have for just a preview of what will be going on next. Jason, you have come up. I don't know if you wanted to make any comments. Okay. Any other comments? Again, thank you all very much. Ian, why don't you go ahead and close this out as to our next steps?
Sure. So next steps, we will be asking for another meeting. I'm not sure if it'll be this fall or winter, but I do also, we will work on scheduling something as soon as we have had more time to discuss what an equity assessment might look like. So we'll come back to you for feedback once we have that developed. However, in the meantime, I wanted to note that I believe this may very well be Sheriff Reese's last meeting, as well as Commissioner Bozovich's last meeting, as both of them did not seek re-election. And so thank you for your service. I say that both personally and also on behalf of the CJC.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And yes, to both the gentlemen for your long-term service. Thank you very much. All right, it looks like this concludes the needs for the meeting today. Unless there's something else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us. I do want to say, hopefully everyone will be able to fill the open time that you have left this Friday morning. And thank you very much for us getting through the material as quickly as we have. And unless there's someone else that wants to make any closing comments, we will be going ahead and adjourning the meeting. And again, thank you very much. Be safe, be well, enjoy your Friday and this upcoming weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.